For the lunch top, we're going to make our straps up first. So we have to turn them inside out or finish them. So we've got a piece of bag stiffener cut at 1 inch wide, attached to one edge of our strap. So the raw edges is folded to the middle, then we fold that closed. But we're going to do an envelope finish at the end, so we're going to open that up again even though the creases are there. Put right sides together, raw edges together, widthways. And then that fold up to the raw edges, make sure they are all even. And we're going to sew along the edge just 1/4 of an inch or a little bit bigger. We cut back our bag stabilizer that's sitting inside this just a little bit back from the seam allowance so as it wasn't bulky to turn through. Then we open this up once and then once again. Once there, opened up, and once again, hard to see with the black, sorry. And through again. And you'll find that lovely neat corner, lovely square corner, all enveloped into the centre. Now there's a wee step there, and that little step happens if you don't make sure that that crease or that second fold is tight up against the edge. It needs to be nice and tight. There can't be any movement around that corner. It needs to be tight. And if you do it tight along that corner, you will not find that there's a step there when you turn it through. See, that step's not there anymore. It's gone because it was tight around that curve. Push that edge out. And then we're just going to stitch around the edge of this, just edge stitch the strap closed. So I fixed that other end, and now we're going to stitch this around the edge. I'm just using a patchwork sole. Edge stitching that open edge closed, and because those ends are finished, it makes it quite easy and simple. A little bit of hesitation. I should have used the humper jumper there, or even used the packet of needles to actually doesn't lift the back of that foot. Okay, we're done. One handle. Given the measurements in the notes of actually how we do this, so we want to measure our zip. So we've trimmed back our top edge curved seam back to 1/4 of an inch. And then we need to measure for our zip to make sure. We need to include our seam allowance at the end because we need to actually put some covers on the end of our zip. When I say covers, I want that we've got an open zip, so no stoppers. And I just want to put a cover. We sew about a little over an inch or a little bit over 2.5 centimetres in from the edge. That is about 2 1/4 or 2 1/2. And we want to about an inch in from the edge. It doesn't really matter how much it just depends on how much zip you're going to lose as far as opening goes. It does not really matter, so make sure that's all lined up. As soon as it comes in contact with the teeth of the machine, it puts it all out of whack. That's fine. Stack it up, make the sandwich, stitch in from the edge. Now I'm stitching in an inch from the edge, 2.5 centimetres, 25 mils. through all layers. When that's finished, we're going to peel that back. See, they're all going to go that direction. But we're going to trim the zip out from the inside of it so as it doesn't get caught in the seam. So it wants to be a shy or a narrow 1/4 inch. And the reason I've got 4 layers of fabric there is so as that it represents the same thickness as the zip tape. And it's the same width as the zip tape. There we go. So that's a cap or a cover on the end of the zip. So basically you do not want the zip in that seam. It needs to be moved up so when that seam is stitched and turned out, it's not bulky. That's the whole idea. It's not bulky. We're just going to top stitch our handles on next. I'm giving you measurements to measure down in and up from the bottom. This is what I meant by putting a needle pack behind the foot. It just elevates it slightly. It works like a hump jumper. Some people use a piece of cardboard folded up a few times. I think a pack of needles is actually quite good. The actual closed Smets packs are sort of a little bit thicker, which is nice. I'm just doing a square. You can put those on any way you wish. So that's through the join panels. I've used black because I wanted quite a stark contrast. All I can say is just make sure they're in the same position each side. You might want to put them on with some rivets. There we go. 1, 2. 2 sides, 2 handles, ready to attach the base. Actually, no, we're ready to attach the zip. So I just fold my handles down on this and just clip them to the bottom seam. Right. So we're just going to nip the edge of the zip just in about 1/8 of an inch, like 2 or 3 mils. Not very much. Don't clip right into the zip because it makes the zip frail. Now the zip is right side down against the right side of the panel. So we've got the wrong side's facing us. Just clip around that curve. Okay, so that's nice and even. And with a zip foot, I'm going to sew in just over 1/4 inch in from the edge. So I want to cover that perimeter stitching line on the pedal. So with a zip foot, you could actually move your needle out. This zip foot I'm using there is about 1/4 inch wide. That's why I like it. You could use the edge. You could put your needle across on the edge of your normal sewing foot. It's up to you how you want to, but we're not stitching right up against the teeth. We're only stitching 1/4 inch in from the edge of the zip tape because we want the zip to create a slight gusset around the top of the tote bag. Right, first side done. See, it's got a slight gusset. We don't want it right tight. We want a slight little strip of black showing. Complements the handles. Right, next side. Now the next side is a little bit more challenging, only because it wants to fight against the curve. So what I do is I actually do the first 3 inches at the beginning and the end of the zip. I attach it, and then I place some tape, some pins or some clips around the rest of the zip. So we'll do this end and then the end. Then we'll go back to where we started off. So you'll see I've stitched for 3 inches here, and then 3 inches there, and now I've got the rest of that zip to catch. So let's just put it in place with some clips. Clip around the curves. I just find by doing that, there is less likely to have a twist once you come to the end with the zip. Because we've got overlap panels overlap seams on our panels, there might be a slight difference in length, but the zip has to accommodate that. So that fits nicely. Go back to where we finished stitching at the beginning and carry on and complete that seam. So we have the zip done on both sides. Let's just quickly turn it through and show you what that looks like. There we go. Looks like a very odd shape, doesn't it? But it's not. And you can see that I've got that little tab on the end of the zip, and it just stops the zip being bulky, because that seems a slight point. Now we need to line these. We need to put the lining in on these sections first. Don't leave it till later. Do it now. So we need to do our lining. And we're just going to sew to the left hand side of the zip stitching line. Basically, it's just very simple. Pin it or clip it if you wish. First section. There we go. That's sitting there. And then do the last like we did before. First section, last section, because we're going to have to keep on running the zip. Oh, what have I caught it on? Let's have a look. Oh no. Just not being very compliant. First section, and then our last section. Just for 3 inches or so. You know, 8 or 9 centimetres. It just helps with the line, because we can then open that zip up all the way down the end there. It's not in the way, puller's not in the way, and it's easier to actually apply that lining. So there we have the lining on. Okay, so that's what it looks like now. We've done those 2 ends. Turn it back through. And then just continue and finish that seam. But we can pull that zip down. We can pull that zip down to the very, very end. It's not going to be in the way. Makes for an easier life. It looks fiddly, but it can only go together one way. The major part, once the lining's on the edge of the zips, the major part of this is already done. The rest of it is just some very quick seams. There we go. One side is lined. Woohoo! The lining looks tight and feels tight, and that's good because the linings on the inside need to be firm. Let's get the other side and do exactly the same thing. Do exactly the same thing, and then you've got both sides done. Now you see I've done an edge stitch through all layers just around the edge of that zip where it's sewn on. So all the layers, the zip is one way, the panel and the lining is going towards the left hand side, and I'm just going to edge stitch all the way around the edge, and that just stops the fabric lining from being caught in the zip. We don't want that to happen. We don't want any form of resistance when we're actually doing the zip up. It needs to be nice and quick and easy and out of the way of the teeth. Edge stitching around the edge of this with a flat soled foot is just a very, very good idea. Through all layers. I gave this a slight press before we did this step just to make sure everything was in the right place. Don't over press though. And we get down so far, then we've got to actually close that zip up slightly. Let's come down as far as we can. Edge stitch, edge stitch, edge stitch, stop. Okay, and then off. That just holds all the fabric away from the teeth of the zip. Right. See how easy that runs? That's what you want with a lunch tote. You want it to be quick and easy and durable. Right. Now we need to attach our base. So all it is we're going to do the two short lines. So between that bottom section of the straight line, don't go around the corner. We're going from point to point. Seam on seam, left hand side of the stitching line, just sewing around the perimeter, seam on seam, stopping at those points. Don't go any further past them. Okay, so that's the seam, and those ends are free. Okay, so those ends are free. Because that's going to be sewn and sort of slightly sloped up, so we see a little bit of the black from the end of the lunch tote. Okay, so with the work, with that seam pressed open and the other one pressed open, we need to add our lining. Okay, so the lining is going to go on there. We're going to sew the lining. We're going to sew on one side first, like so. We're going to sew that seam, and then we're going to sew that seam. Then when those seams are sewn, we can then pull the work through to the right side through the openings at the end. Okay, both those seams are sewn with a 1/2 inch seam. Let's just pull it through to the right side. And now we just need to finish our ends. Right. Can you see it shape taking? It's a very pretty little object. So what we're going to do next is we're going to actually join our lining, so it's wrong sides together. So we're going to join our lining to the edges of our outside panels, just with a an 1/8 of an inch seam. We just want to catch it along the very edges, because we're going to do a French seam finish. So we're going to, once this has been joined, we're going to turn it through to the right side again. Make sure you've got seam on top of seam, clip those edges together. And we're just sewing, it's not 1/4 of an inch, and it's a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch. What I would refer to as 3/16, but that's not a measurement that we use today. So to me, it would be like a 4mm seam. We used to use 3/16 seams when we were tailoring, but that was 100 years ago. Just keep those edges together. We want them to be end on end, edge on edge, raw seam on raw seam. Right, so that those edges are caught together. Okay. Then we want to just make a snip in that green section of the. We're going to do that, but want to do the other end as well. We're going to make a little snip in the green section of the zip cover. Once we've got this, I think it's important that you see this, because it really is an important step to getting a nice finish for your French seam. So you can do it in 2 sections. Right, now, so I've snipped into the zip cover fabric just about 1/4 of an inch in, and we're going to be then stitching with our wrong sides together. So we're stitching the seam on the outside of the project. Can you see I've just clipped in there and snipped in there, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to actually mark a spot, because then it needs to go on top of each other, but I'm going to I just want to put a mark there so I can actually find where that corner is from the other side, because I can't see it. And that's what we're sort of aiming for that clip. Edges together. And we're sewing again just our bare 1/4 inch seam. Stop and then turn the corner. Everything has to fit, it just does. Okay, so that's our seam there. We just want to clip the little end off that point, and then we're going to turn it through to the wrong side. We'll turn it inside out. And we're going to stitch that seam again from the inside with a 3/8 seam or a 1 centimetre seam. Wriggle that point out, please. push those corners out. If you want to press this, you can. I generally don't for a French seam. I like to actually let the fabric do what it wants to do. So my 1 centimetre seam allowance, my 3/8 is about my foot width. So I'm going to stop, and I want to stop in the middle of that zip cover fabric, or the zip end fabric. And then I'm going to turn the corner. Again, lay everything straight. I'm pushing down the front of my foot so it doesn't hesitate. And there we have it. There's our French seam. If you don't have all the seam on the inside covered, just go back and stitch over it again. Turn it through, push those corners out quite firmly. A bit of steam will help. Interesting end. Quite fun. Relatively simple, but effective. A great little lunch tote.